I knew that we had something. I said, there's something to this whole building science, home performance thing, because we didn't do anything HVAC related. And we were able to make some huge financial as well as comfort impacts to this family, and the pushback that we got internally because the company was so used to, we just want to stick with our repair and replace model. There's a market to serve that, but that doesn't serve my heart and my soul any longer. It's time to feed the beast and be able to really serve clients on a much deeper level.
Hi, and welcome to the Heat Pump Podcast. Our goal is to make sure the transition to heat pumps goes well for everyone, homeowners, contractors, and the planet. We cover all topics related to heat pumps. Our guest today is David Dehar. David lives in the Minneapolis area, and he is in a very interesting position. He is planning and prepping to launch a heat pump focused company starting in January when his non-compete comes up. As you'll hear, David is a longtime HVAC veteran, and he is passionate about building science and heat pumps. He founded a company and successfully sold it. He's also a remarkable example of someone who knows exactly what he wants to do and how he's different from everyone else. In a time when more and more competitors are coming out saying they install heat pumps, the key to winning is knowing how you're different. David knows that inside and out, and he's setting up everything about his process to only talk to leads and customers and homeowners who know why he's different and they want to work with him. If you have just launched or are about to launch a heat pump focused business and you want to set it up from the beginning to win, this is a fantastic episode to listen into. Enjoy the show. I have David Dehar here with me. David, you're in a super interesting spot at the moment. Tell the audience where you are, what you're thinking about and planning for.
Yeah, so I've been doing this for over 20 years now. I had a traditional HVAC company that I sold back in 2020. I'm currently in a non-compete, but I'm laying the foundation to have a company that is going to be focused solely on heat pump and dual fuel installations of heating and cooling equipment. And we're laying the groundwork and the foundation to launch that business here shortly.
I love that. And the audience will know why we wanted you on here, because you're the exact person we're building this podcast for based on where you are. Let's rewind the clock a little bit. Tell us how you got into HVAC and how you got to this point where this is what you're planning for.
Yeah, so I got into HVAC when I was in the military. I joined the military right out of high school. Boot camp was my first trip on a plane. I was a machinist mate on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier out of Norfolk, Virginia. And that's where I started cutting my teeth on HVAC. And we made potable water. We made the steam for the catapults for the aircraft carrier and all that type of stuff. And when I was going to get out, I started thinking about a career, being that I was going to be going back to Minnesota, where I'm currently at now. We were going to always need heating and cooling. HVAC was a natural fit. And being that I had done a lot of it in the military, it was a pretty easy transition. I was at tech school for 2 years. I planned on working for the local gas utility provider. And at the end of it, I got sent out with the installation team by mistake for replacing heating and cooling equipment. I just fell in love with it. It was really amazing to have new people, a new environment each and every day, going into a new house. Got done with that and decided to go into the installation side, got hired on right out of tech school with somebody here locally. I did that for 7 years. And then in 2011, I decided to go out on my own. I had that entrepreneurial seizure that gets spoken about and figured I could do it better than my boss. Even though we had a fantastic relationship, I just decided that I was going to go and see what I could do, and started your traditional HVAC box, service and installation company. And quickly fell into that, and it just took off very fast. I built up a company from just myself and the one truck to I ended up having 9 employees, and I got bought out in 2020 by a local competitor, and I worked with them for 3 years. And they were a very large company. They do great service and great work, but they are carrying on that tradition of your typical box swapping company. In that time period too, I got exposed to home performance or building science, and I was having some clients with some issues that HVAC wouldn't solve. I knew there was something there. I started solving a couple issues for clients of mine, using air sealing, insulating, blower door testing, and that type of thing. And I was like, wow, I wonder how many other people I could have helped along the way, that it wasn't just add another supplier, another return. And got introduced to it there. And I wanted to implement some more of that into my first company that I had, but there was a lot of internal resistance, as well as how do we shift and move away from just your typical HVAC company that have to keep feeding the beast with leads. You have employees, so you have to keep them working, you have to keep them busy. So to make a shift like that was going to be very difficult. When I sold the company, I thought I got tired of it and I wanted to get out for a while. So I got my life insurance license and I did that for about 9 months, and it almost drove me crazy. I'm not a sit at a desk type of guy.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to help people on a deeper level. I wanted to solve these comfort issues in their home, these challenges, because I know they can be solved. And I know it's the emergence of building science and home performance and HVAC is a very powerful way to do that. Now I'm very excited to be able to be laying the groundwork and preparing my company, the future company here, to be able to do that.
On one of our first conversations, you talked about two moments that kind of changed the trajectory of your first company. When you discovered heat pumps, and then when you discovered the HVAC plus building science intersection.
Yeah.
Would you tell us about both of those moments and what they meant for you?
Yeah. So both of them were very powerful. To make a long story short, I had made some incorrect hires into my first company, and there were some holes in the boat that needed to be filled. The only way that I could really figure out to fill them is to do it myself. The company was in a bit of a free fall and I was struggling. I remember having this conversation with a really great friend of mine here locally, and is also my Mitsubishi sales rep. We had a conversation back in, it was about 2016, 2017, and we'd always talked about ductless, and I had been doing a little bit of it, but we'd always envisioned this opportunity, if you would, to build an entirely ductless or heat pump based company. And I said, I love them. I love the idea of them. And there's a very streamlined process that you can create for installing these types of systems. And I said, but if I'm going to do it, I need to learn from somebody who has already been doing it successfully. And that's one of the things that I've learned from when I was younger, is find somebody who's doing what you want to do and they're successful at it, and go in and see how they do it and then copy it as well as you can and make it work here for yourself. And so I did that. I flew out to Boston and I studied under Mike Capuccio, who I know you've had on the podcast. He's still a fantastic friend. In fact, I just went back to his training about 6 months ago. He had down in Schaumburg, Illinois, and took his training again to pick up what else I had maybe even forgotten, or knew something new that he had developed. And that was a huge intersection for me, because I came back, implemented that turned the company around, and was able to help me sell the company 3 years later, by completely turning it around and utilizing the ductless heat pumps.
Now, before we move on from that, how did it help turn the company around? What about that product kind of changed your trajectory?
Yeah, it wasn't the product itself has always been fantastic. And when it comes to ductless, I still like to install Mitsubishi, but it was really the processes that he used and what he had taught me. He literally showed me how to lay out your warehouse, how to lay out your trucks, how to order equipment, just utilizing everything that he can. The entire process of handling the client from front to back, how to create a process for them that really streamlined it for the client, took the confusion out of it. They knew exactly what to expect. And I literally just photocopied it, brought it back here. And it was amazing how much it works when you implement a process and then you stick with it. And that's what we're going to be looking to do again with the new company, taking it to what's definitely going to be ductless heat pumps involved, but we're going to be doing a lot of ducted and dual fuel systems too here, because that's just what the market is ripe and ready for.
So it was sales, it was operations, it was end-to-end business process changes that really turned things around.
Yeah, just implementing what he did, what was successful, bringing it back here and following through with it. I've been to several trainings over the years, and you'd always go and you would learn one or two things, but before you know it, it was easy to come back and fall into your old routine and not implement the stuff that you learned. And when I did that, when I did to go learn something and then brought it back and implemented it, it just completely revolutionized the business and completely turned things around.
Nice. Good on you too, because Mike is amazing. He has fantastic ideas and training, but the real step is that execution. And if you don't execute on those ideas, you're not going to get any positive outcomes. So it takes a lot to come back from something like that and just change things soup to nuts for your business. So it's congrats for you for pulling that off.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, and so I found that I don't know if it's a secret formula, but it's really like the formula for success. I can't remember who said it, if it was Tony Robbins or years ago, find out somebody who's doing what you want to do and get the same results. And it worked. It just made sense and completely saved the company. I'm a little stubborn and hard headed and I refuse to fail. So I was going to figure it out, probably even at the detriment to my own health and safety. We got to make it work, and failure isn't an option. So we just keep running into those walls until we break through.
That's awesome. Tell us about how you had this moment, or maybe a series of moments, where you realized the overlap of building science and HVAC was like so powerful, but also where your passion was. How did you find that?
I have one example that really stands out, and I think this is really was the catalyst. So I had done a couple of things where you would go into a home and like they have a bonus room or a room that's too hot or too cold. And a lot of people think that, oh, I just need another heat vent or a heat register. I need more heating or cooling. And I thought the same thing for a long time as well. I had this one particular client that called me, and it was fantastic people. He was a Marine who flew Apache attack helicopters. He was also working on redesigning the cockpit for Apache attack helicopters, to just a super smart guy. And he had an amazing wife and a beautiful family. And so we got called out there because he had some other local competitors out and they were telling him that he needed another furnace. Not he had to replace his existing one. He needed an additional one to the one that he had. And I'm like, man, this is a 1-year-old furnace. It's 100,000 BTUs. This is a decent sized house, but it was an interesting house. So there was 3 full floors above grade, and then there was a basement that was unfinished. And they had bought the house about 7 or 8 months earlier. And when they had gone through the winter time, they were not able to get the house above 55 degrees in January, this is Minnesota. So if it's 55, we can sustain that temperature here for 3-4 months. Yeah. And his wife and him, obviously this could start to cause some issues. And so outside the fact that their gas bill was $900 a month, and his wife was staying in a hotel. She would no longer even stay in their new house. Long story short, I went over there and we started looking around and I started checking things out. And as we were walking up to the 3rd floor, you guys don't remember, but here we used to have, before they built the US Bank Stadium where the Vikings play, they used to have the Metrodome where the Twins and the Vikings played. And it was like looked like a giant marshmallow. But when you would leave, the pressure inside the building would literally blow you right out the door. Like you would almost throw you out onto the sidewalk. I remember it as a kid. And as I'm walking up to the 3rd floor in this gentleman's house, I'm being pushed up the stairs by what I was just starting to realize was the stack effect that we were having, that all that hot air was trying to get up to the colder air, which would normally have been the attic. And this was the attic space. So it's like, damn, that's really interesting. That's weird. I'd been playing with blower doors and stuff like that. So I had a buddy, I said, come over and check this out. We did a blower door test and we found out that the person had finished off the 3rd floor by just throwing up paneling. So there was no insulation anywhere in the interior of the house separating the living space from the attic space. And it was just almost like 4-story chimney, if you would.
Wow.
And I was like, man, this just isn't right. So we ended up taking the paneling off, and we ended up spray foaming, doing what we call a hot roof, the entire attic space. And the next month, the gas bill was $300. And wow. He was able to get it in the middle of January, February, which our outside temperatures can definitely be well below zero for sustained periods of time. He was able to maintain 72 degrees throughout the entire home, no problem. We did also do some air sealing with some insulation, some spray foam around the rim joist too, which is obviously the main points of attack is your lid, your attic space, as well as your rim joist when it comes to some of that stuff. And we didn't end up having to add a new furnace at all. We didn't have to do anything with his existing furnace other than dial it in a little bit for him with his blower speeds and whatnot. But his wife moved back into the house, and as far as I know, still today, they're still happily married. But that one was amazingly impactful for me, because we were talking $30,000-$40,000 with a duct system, a new furnace, new AC, or an additional system that would have just added to his energy consumption and his bills and not solved any problems. And they would have been $30,000 to $40,000 more in debt on top of the market price house that they had just purchased. That's one that I'll never forget. And I knew when we did that we had something. I said, there's something to this whole building science, home performance thing, because we didn't do anything HVAC related. And we were able to make some huge financial as well as comfort impacts to this family. And That was probably in that 2017, 2018 timeframe. And that's when I really was like, I want to start doing something with this. And again, that kind of goes back to when I was telling the story earlier about the pushback that we got internally because the company was so used to, as unfortunate, I think a lot of companies are, that, hey, we just want to stick with our repair and replace model, which is fine. There's a market to serve that, but that doesn't serve my heart and my soul any longer. It's time to feed the beast and be able to really serve clients on a much deeper level for people who want to make their homes truly comfortable. Energy efficient is going to be a side product of it, but really trying to help them dial in their comfort and solve some real issues is where we're going.
You can both save the house, but also save marriages doing this work, which is fantastic.
Great stories about how people have found this passion for building science, but none have ended with, and we saved a marriage yet. No, you didn't say that, but it's in between the lines there, David. That's awesome. So it sounds like you did some more work there and you tried to make it happen at the company you were at after the acquisition. You got the pushback. And so you knew you wanted to do this. So tell us about where you are now. You've got a few months left on your non-compete. It sounds like you've got a strong idea for what you want to build. Tell us about the company you want to build and tell us about the steps you're going through to make that happen before January, February rolls around.
Like we mentioned with the ductless, when I talked about finding the best people in their field, which led me to Mike Capuccio, I'm in the process of doing the exact same thing. I want to get the brand right from the beginning, the messaging right from the beginning. So we're finding the right people to work with in doing that, finding the right people to work with in building the website and the content for the website, really creating a filtering process to not only for us, but for the client, because they're used to the traditional HVAC. Just, hey, my furnace is broke, my AC is broke, come out and fix it. And that's just not what we do anymore. It's a longer process. So we want to slow the process down. We want to make sure we're helping to educate the client and letting them know, hey, this isn't going to be your typical swap, repair, replacement company, there's a process that's going to entail. And so we're not looking to work with everybody, but establishing the right clientele base, it's going to probably take a little bit. Obviously, we're going to have to get some traction and let people know that we're out there and we're going to do things a little bit differently. Cutting off from being that old type of HVAC company is not only for myself, but for the market more, because I do have a lot of people that I have worked with in the past and that I do work with. I think they're used to not being able to find anybody that can merge the two or even know that the two really exist. I think people think their furnace and their air conditioner is one thing and their home is another, when in reality, as we probably know, and we're trying to help let other people know, it's all one system. It works together. It's systems within systems that work. And when they work good together, they can work in harmony and you can really impact people's health, safety, and comfort. And seeing the right people to get that message out there, finding the right processes from the beginning, creating the right order of operations as to how we're going to go about doing this so that we're serving the client to the highest level is of the utmost importance. And that's the process that I'm in now, putting those right pieces into place, the right financing opportunities, working with the right company, because we're going to be doing testing in and testing out, not only of the home, the duct system, as well as the system that we put in, and then documenting that, because it's a very long explanation to give people who don't really understand the HVAC world and how it works. There's so many pieces. You have the labor shortage, you have a knowledge shortage, you have the fact that we're trying to transition over from a heavily gas market to a more electrified market. The lack of training that is going on, the technician patience and the company patience and understanding. You have to slow it down if you want to do it right. With gas furnaces, they're a lot more forgiving than heat pumps. So if you just plug them in and turn them on, for lack of a better term, client's probably going to get the same comfort they've always gotten, which is subpar. I think we've gotten so used to subpar that we don't really know how comfortable our homes can be. And once you experience it, to be able to deliver that, you have to take your time. You have to slow down. And when guys are rushed and they're like, I got to get to the next job because we have to turn things over quickly, and the company has to move you on to the next job, it's just unfortunate sometimes that it gets skipped or it doesn't get set up properly and started up properly. And heat pumps aren't as forgiving as furnaces. So doing things to a much more detailed process, some things that may have been good ideas to do and recommendations now, they need to become part of your standard process when you're installing and starting up and setting up this equipment. So logging all that, documenting it, leaving the customer with documentation, utilizing apps and technology utilizing your guys' product on the front end for doing a proper load calculation, and now being able to incorporate all that information together. So we're designing the systems properly. All these steps need to be taken. And every time you skip one of these little steps, you just move more towards the old way of doing things and increasing the chances of doing things not right, not proper. Sometimes you can take a shot and you can get lucky, but I don't want to guess. I don't want to take shots. I want to know that, hey, here's the process we created, and we created this thing because we want to give ourselves and our clients, most of all, the greatest chance of success. And if we deviate from that, even on one or two steps, we're moving them away from that end target, which is being happy, more than satisfied in the product that they got, and feeling like that they're extremely grateful that they decided to work with us or found us and had the opportunity to work with us. And hopefully that model will get out there and a lot more companies will do it, because there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of opportunity to do things correctly. And those days of just banging something in and turning it on and walking away, just those, I would like to see them come to an end sooner than later. I think we got a long road to go, but somebody's got to start it somewhere. And that's what we hope to do to bring to our market here.
What is your design process for, let's say, a typical home? They've got an existing gas furnace and you're thinking about heat pumps. They've got an existing duct system. What does your process look like?
So we're still building it for the most part, but just the years of doing this, I know that, do you have to have a home tested? I think so. And when I say tested, we should really come out and do a blower door. We need to know the infiltration rate on that home. We need to know how leaky the home is. I love ACCA, and I know that they had to establish some type of a baseline, but I think with the options on your typical load calculation being semi-tight, leaky, everybody has a little bit different understanding of what that is or what that means. And in reality, if we're not testing, we are making some level of a guess. Now, can you get good at guessing? I'm sure you can, but I don't really want to guess with somebody's hard-earned money. I want to really come in. I want to test things. To me, it's critical. To me, I need to know where my starting point is with your house, because if we have to make some, improvements to the shell with air sealing and insulating, we're going to make that recommendation. And in reality, if I feel like the level of success is going to be diminished by not doing that, then we're going to probably pass on that project, because we want to deliver a certain level of success. I mean, it has to be meaningful. It has to be impactful. And so that is one of the first steps. And then you have to test the duct system. I'm going to bet 90% of our projects are going to be dual fuel systems here in Minnesota. Last winter was mild, and I'm hopeful that it'll continue on, but it's Minnesota. Like every sports team that we have, you're going to be disappointed. They're going to let you down. The winters are going to definitely let you down too. So I don't trust them. So we have to test the duct system. And then do you have to make any ductwork modifications? Not all of our houses, but a majority of our homes here have basements with ducted systems that are typically running. We don't have a ton that go outside the envelope, fortunately. So you can get systems that are in the attic space, but most commonly, most of them are inside the envelope, which there's a debate going on right now whether the duct leakage to the inside the home really does or doesn't matter. And to me, I think, well, it does matter. It can make a difference, because then you can't control what room you're trying to deliver that to. So testing the home, testing the system, and then designing the system properly, doing a proper load calculation, and being able to incorporate those blower door numbers or infiltration rate numbers into there, and then setting up and designing everything accordingly, selecting the right equipment, and then most of all, installing the system properly, dialing it in, setting it up, and documenting everything properly is going to be that final piece. And then taking the customer through exactly how to operate the system, balancing the system, probably going around and testing with some type of a flow hood and making sure that we are getting the right amount of CFM into each space. That takes time. That's a lot longer than just, hey, I'm going to slap in your furnace, your air conditioner, turn it on, and here's how to use your thermostat, download your little app or whatever, and then walk away. The model doesn't allow them to take the time to do it properly and go around and do that. That's why our installs are, from just the equipment side of it, is probably going to be a full 2 days. Now, granted, it's just me, so that's why things are a little bit slower. But at the same time, like I tell the customer, it is me from start to finish. When I come out to give an estimate, it's me. When I design the system, it's me. When I install the system and start the system up, it's me. Everything, I'm in control and in charge of that from that touch point.
That's an amazing foundation. And you highlighted one of the most important things about load calculations, that the air infiltration guess that is often used for an ACA compliant load calc. It is a guess if you're doing that tightness method, and it is often the most sensitive variable in all of load calculations. So if you guess incorrectly, you're not doing a blower door, your loads could be off by, we've seen some studies where we plus or minus 50 to 60 to 80%.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
That's not like half a ton or a ton. That's like, the system's going to work at all or it's not. Be massively oversized or massively undersized. And blower door is definitely the right way to go about it. With your experience with ductless equipment in particular, how often, either historically or do you imagine with your business that you're getting off the ground, where you're thinking about maybe we abandon the ductwork and we just go with a pure ductless system? Is that something that's happened to you in the past? Or?
Minneapolis and St. Paul, inside the 494, 694 loop, has a lot of older housing stock. It's not hard to find a 100-year-old home in there. And a lot of those homes do have boilers with cast iron radiators and stuff like that. And I've done over 10 years, probably close to 400 or 500 ductless systems in homes in that area. A lot of those homes too are your older design homes. So they're stucco homes, they're lath and plaster siding. So having the experience of just making a penetration through a stucco wall and a lath and plaster interior is much different than cutting through a lap board siding and some sheetrock. So we do have a lot of houses that are still in need of that. Again, because they're leaning a little bit more on it from the cooling aspect. Prior, I haven't really done much like blower door testing or anything like that, but that's going to change with the new company. We're going to at least just want to know the starting point of it. Should we make any of these improvements? Because again, you can walk into a 1,600 square foot Cape over here and you'll get a 120,000 BTU cast iron boiler in it. Things are changing now. And if we can make some improvements, we'll want to. But we do see that quite often inside the city limits.
Your ductless makes a ton of sense. When you've got an existing hydronic system, you don't have any ductwork, you're going to go for ductless. But what about the scenario where you come across a really poorly built duct system? It's super leaky. You got a bunch of other challenges with the duct system. Do you go over to ductless in those scenarios ever?
Yeah, you have to do a little bit of a deeper dive into examining the duct system and see just how bad is it? Could it even be repairable? If it is repairable, does it make sense to do that? Does the cost to do that make sense? We do finish off a lot of our attic spaces here. We do finish off a lot of our basements. So sometimes you can be talking about removing an entire basement ceiling just to get at the ductwork. But it also depends on the size and the layout of the house. How chopped up is it? Are we going to be sticking 16 ductless heads throughout this house to make sure we're providing heat in every habitable space, which is a requirement by Minnesota code? There's other ways, obviously, that you can modify the system, like in bathrooms, doing some electric in-floor heat or some wall heaters. But now those systems can be expensive to operate, cheaper to install. So it's like you start factoring all these pieces in here and what makes the most sense to bring this together, not only for a performance and a comfort standpoint, but also the client's pocketbook.
We had Peter Trost from Energy Circle on recently and talked a lot about marketing. And his focus was what makes you different. And your answer on your design and install process very clearly explains what makes you different. But I could see that being a real surprise for a homeowner who's not expecting that kind of service and detail. So you mentioned you're thinking about two things right now: how to construct a brand that communicates that and how to build a website.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about who you're working with, what are you doing, how are you doing it, to then make sure that when you walk in to a person's home, like they're the right kind of lead for a different kind of company.
Well, it's ironic that you bring both of those pieces up because I just got off a phone call with Steve over at Energy Circle.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be working with Energy Circle, and I knew about them before. And so it wasn't a right fit for my old company, but it is the absolute correct fit for the new company. Like you were saying, we almost want to do like a mini funnel. So if we have somebody that's looking at a certain price point or looking for your traditional, hey, my furnace is broken, come and fix it. And if it's not fixable, we just need to replace it. And I don't really care what you put in there. Trying to filter those people out to save both of them time and money, because you walk out your door and land on 5 guys that'll do it that typical traditional way for you. And that's just not us. I'm almost trying to come at this from a standpoint, because I'm only really going to be working with 1 to maybe 2 clients a week, which is 40 to 50 people a year, maybe in the best case, 60 or 80 people. We're really trying to get them to determine that we're not the company that they want to work with, just because they're not going to be not willing to go through the necessary steps that we feel are critical for us to be able to apply the greatest chances of success to maximize their comfort in their home and really make these changes.
That's so counterintuitive to a lot of folks who are like, more leads is better. But given the bandwidth on your time, that makes a ton of sense. Do you have a sense for what sort of things you'll do to create those barriers to have people filter themselves out?
And that's where we're leaning on Energy Circle a little bit. I know they have some other clients that they do that with. I think one of the things per se is, and again, it's interesting because from the branding standpoint, we're working with KickCharge to build our brand and our logo. And one of the things that they do is they don't typically recommend you put a phone number on your truck. It's a website. We want to make them work themselves down the funnel to filter themselves out, so where they can't just call and ask questions. Not that we don't want to answer those questions, but we really want to get it to them as quickly as possible that we may not be what you're looking for. This new company is going to be a heat pump focused installation company. I'm setting up some strategic partnerships for other companies I can work with for the service and maintenance side of it, of the systems once we're done installing them. But being that it's just me, I don't have to have a ton of work. I don't need to have 5 jobs a day, 10 jobs a day, one a week, making substantial improvements to a home with the right system and stuff like that is really all that we need. And it allows me to slow down. It allows me to slow the process down. And it really allows me to serve the clients at a very high level. How scalable something like that is to a monster or a massive company, I don't know about monster. If I could obviously duplicate and maybe increase the size of the company so we could serve more people, that might be a goal. But I don't want to get back into that traditional HVAC company where you're like, hey, I got 5 service technicians. I need 5 calls for each of them. I got 5 installers. I need 5 installs for them every day. And we go back to speeding up the process and we start with, in my opinion, cutting corners. Because again, we're not going to be for everybody. We're not going to be for every home. If the people are obviously not willing to invest the time and obviously the money to make the improvements to their home, then it's just not really going to be a good fit for us. Everybody else does that. Again, you can fall out your door and land on 3 guys that do that, but that's just not what we're doing and not where we're going to go.
Makes a ton of sense. If you're doing these things the right way, all of these different steps, you're going to have a callback rate that's going to be under 0.5% of the projects you do. And if you commission these systems correctly, the equipment's been selected correctly, you got the right design, the equipment should really just hum along for years with minimal maintenance and service needs. The way you're setting up your business, it won't be a burning need for that service part of the company.
And now a lot of those mistakes or issues come up too when you have technicians, great people, but it's the labor pool is shrinking. I don't blame them, where it's like you wake up and you're thinking about how soon can I get off? How soon can I get home? And sometimes, especially from the standpoint of being a business owner, my wife and my family are extremely important to me, but they also understand that serving the client is what allows us to live the lifestyle that we want to live. And so if we start to pull away from being able to take care of the client at a higher level or at the highest level possible, it's going to impact that family life. So there may be occasions or something like that where I do have to miss something. I have to stay late. I have to work a little bit longer, but we have to do it to make sure the client is taken care of. But at the same time, when we're stretching out the process and they know that, hey, this job might be a 2 or 3 day job, it's not always, there's not a rush. It's just hard to explain. But when you're a technician and you're in the field and you just have that weight of knowing I have to get this done so I can get to the next thing, which I'll also then have to get that done. There's just something that changes when you don't have to worry about that any longer. When you can just say, hey, I can just slow down. I can take my time. I can make sure I'm dotting all my I's, crossing my T's. And the customer can feel that. They can tell when you're really taking your time. You really care. Well, we always want that to come across.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yep.
Eric and I truly are like reading each other's minds. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast is one of Amply's core values, which, like a lot of tech companies, are known for move fast and break things. And we know that our software is being used by folks like you who are in someone's home. You can't break someone's home.
Yeah.
That HVAC system isn't right. It's the only piece of hardware in the home that impacts comfort 24/7, 365. Like, it is not something to mess around with. And so to hear you articulate your approach to that, it just resonates for us because we feel the same thing. And we want our software to just work every time. So I've loved your answers across the board here, David. They've been incredible. What I'm remarking on most is come across like a man with a plan. A lot of people, it helps because you did this once before. business
Yeah.
owner, you ran it, you sold it, and so you're getting a second run. And a lot of folks who are starting their business, it's often for the first time. I'm wondering, is there anything you're worried about? Is there anything in the back of your mind? Oof, this is a thing that I haven't got figured out, and I really got to crack this, and it's keeping me up a little bit.
I've always just had this attitude that, you know what, it's going to come and we're going to figure it out. You really can't let fear paralyze you and stop you from moving forward, especially if you are a business owner or somebody that's really, it's one of the highs or rushes I get where I wake up and I know that, hey, today's on me. It's going to be a success or it's going to be a failure. And because I refuse to fail, I'm going to make it some type of success, even if that means making mistakes and then learning from them, which I've obviously had 20 plus years of making plenty of mistakes. But I think not just, not that I don't try to plan or prepare, but I guess that I do expect things to go wrong. I do expect things to come up, but really it's about how quickly can you adapt and overcome those issues or those challenges. I don't know that I would say that there's really anything that's unsolvable or even call it a problem. I always just consider it that it's an opportunity that needs a solution. The excitement, I think, of being able to finally build this business in this manner and launch this business, because obviously it's a little bit nerve wracking going, geez, it's such a thrill. It's such a rush. And just like I said, find the right people. There's a couple of people you've had on some of your earlier podcasts that I would like to reach out to and even see if I can fly out to their location and just observe their operations for what they do and just have them see if they're willing to open up their doors and share with me a little bit on, hey, here's what we found doesn't work. Here's what we found does work. Because if I can find out what they've made mistakes on and not have to make that same mistake, that's a lesson that I didn't have to personally learn. And I can make that adaptation in my business a lot quicker and make it more successful. But in the end, that excitement overcomes any issues, fears, or worries that I have.
It's come up a number of times in conversation. Dual fuel. Why dual fuel versus pure electric heat strips or even no backup heat?
I think because we're addressing the home as a system here, I've been through some winters where 20 below for a sustained period of time is not uncommon. And I always just feel there's any opportunity for that. As soon as we think it won't do it any longer, it's going to do that. Now, that being said, the fact that we have basements that are finished and people may not want to do as much demolition work to make the necessary ductwork modifications, a furnace on a ducted system. Now, granted, when we're right sizing the equipment, it's probably going to bring the duct system a little bit more in line, because traditionally here, our duct systems tend to be undersized. Our equipment tends to be sometimes grossly oversized. But when we right size the equipment, it may not make the ductwork so bad for a furnace, but it changes a little bit with airflow and stuff like that when you're going full electric with a heat pump and an air handler. You couple that with the fact that the heat load might be greater than what we can get for a heat pump system in the heating mode, because here we want to size our heat pumps to the air conditioning size. So for our cooling load, but if a homeowner is willing to make the improvements, then we're definitely willing to do that with them. And you'd be surprised how many calls I've gone out to where the HVAC company was working to talk people out of a heat pump altogether, whether they were going to still do it as a dual fuel and put it on top of a furnace. And to me, that was just like, A, a thank you because the customer found me. But B, it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Why? That if you were up here and watched the television, you'd see them on TV. There's some pretty good sized companies. And I'm like, you guys are talking them out of a dual fuel system and certainly out of an entirely all electric ducted heat pump system, or even a ductless system for that matter. When I understand that they may be a little bit worried about getting those callbacks, but when you address the shell, or at least make the customer aware that, hey, you have some shell issues here. And again, in some cases, if the client isn't going to be willing to make those improvements, I'm going to probably end up walking away from the work. Guaranteeing comfort, I'm pretty sure, is something that you can't do because comfort is relative to everybody. Just saying that you can't do that or talking them out of it entirely is crazy to me.
I mean, dual fuel is a great option, and you can operate in heat pump only mode for probably 90% of the heating season. And in those few hours a year, you can flip over to the gas system. But that makes a ton of sense. It sounds like often in homes you're working in, duct system is undersized. You may not have some kind of envelope issues as well. And you pointed out something that's really critical. In order to comply with Manual S, you got to watch your oversizing for cooling. So if that's a constraint, you end up having a little bit less capacity on the heating side. And in a place like Minnesota, it's tough to balance those things out. So I totally get it. But that was very helpful to hear your perspective and why dual fuel is like the solution of choice most often.
It's setting customer expectations when you are moving from a system that's going to be more gas furnace focused and to a heat pump. It's a different type of heat. It's a different temperature of heat. I just had a lady not too long ago. We adjusted the blower speed on a new system she had installed by somebody else. And now it was a little bit louder at this return that was right over her thermostat in her hallway. And she had never really heard that before. She called me back and she was saying, "Hey, what's going on with this?" I said, "Dude, remember we had that conversation telling you this would be one of those things where you may get a little bit different airflow noise or something like that." But she said, "Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot," because she had talked with 4 other people. So she didn't really remember. That reminded her because I had set that up on the front end and it worked out, positively in that case. But managing those expectations and setting them from the get-go with the proper process is another way to help alleviate a lot of that.
Yeah, super important.
All right, David, one of the things we try to leave people with as if they're in your shoes, thinking about starting business focused on heat pumps, building science, what would you recommend? What resources, blogs, organizations, whatever, would you recommend for folks to get smart and set up the business the right way?
As far as organizations within inside the industry, ACCA, I definitely lean on a lot. National Comfort Institute, NCI. I love NCI. I've been working with them for some time now. As far as industry organizations, and now definitely the entry, I don't want to say the new introduction because Jim Bergman and Measure Quick and those guys have been around for quite some time, but just the system that he's developed for as far as testing and setting these systems up, that's second to none. And that's something that we're going to be utilizing for sure is the Measure Quick process, which they're also working hand in hand with ACCA and NCI, ironically, working together for that. So those are 3 of the big resources that I can go to and utilize. Awesome. They're definitely second to none.
Brilliant. All right, David, thank you so much for being on the Heat Pump Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Heat Pump Podcast. It is a production of Amply Energy. And just a reminder that the opinions voiced were those of our guests or us, depending on who was talking. If you like what you've heard and haven't subscribed, please subscribe in your favorite podcast platform. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to reach out. You can reach us once again at hello@amply.energy, no.com, just .energy. Thanks a lot.